Hello, this is Wahlner. I'd like to begin my series of White House drawings by drawing the Lincoln bedroom and the East Sitting Hall that's in front of it. Let's take a look at where the room is located in the White House and why I've decided to start with this one. As we go upstairs in the White House to the second floor, in the southeast corner there is the Lincoln bedroom, the Lincoln sitting room, the Lincoln bathroom, and the East Sitting Hall. These are amongst the most historical rooms in the White House because they used to be where the presidents had their office, pretty much consistently from James Monroe up to Theodore Roosevelt.
What we know today as the Lincoln bedroom has been the president's office and sometimes cabinet room since at least Andrew Jackson's time. The Mexican-American War was conducted from here, the Civil War was conducted from here, the Emancipation Proclamation was written in this room. What is now the Lincoln sitting room was the president's communications room, getting a telegraph in 1866, a telephone in 1879, and the first White House typewriter a year later. After the president and his staff moved to the West Wing in 1902, these rooms became guest rooms. After the Truman Restoration in 1950, it was formally known as the Lincoln bedroom. So join me as I produce this drawing and we discover more about these interesting rooms. The first thing that I want to do is to isolate the floor plans of the rooms, just the rooms that I want to work on. So that means I get my plan of the second floor and we make a tracing of just the rooms that I'm going to want to draw. First we make the red grid pattern and then we draw the walls. Then we label everything so that I know what's what. We begin with making a thumbnail, just a little sketch of what the drawing could look like and where I might tear walls out and where I might leave them. It ends up looking kind of like this. We're going to get our isolated plan and then put it on the edge of the table here. And then take a look at it from the perspective, the point of view of where we might stand when we're looking at all these rooms. So the next thing that we have to do is get all perspectival on you and figure out our perspective. You notice behind me that the parallel lines of the bookshelves are receding behind me. That demonstrates the principle of perspective, which is things that are farther away are smaller than things that are closer. But we have to map all of that out. And the way that we do that, we establish what is called a nodal point, which is the place where you are standing when you are looking at this thing. And now I want to figure out my angle of view. Like, how wide do I want to see this? Well, I want to see all the way to the end of the ramp, and I also want to include the entirety of the lunette window on the east wall of the east sitting room. So those are two things that I know. Those are two things that I want to put in. So now what you do to get the proportions right is to divide that angle, whatever it is, in two. So that in the center of my composition should be that line, wherever that falls. And then to divide those two halves in half so that I have quarters. And what this allows me to do is that it allows me to check my drawing of the grid framework that I'm doing, so that in each quarter across the drawing, across the paper, that the elements that are supposed to be there are there. Now that curved line represents the picture plane, which is essentially the theoretical piece of paper that I'm working with. So all of the lines that come down from the various corners need to intersect the picture plane, and that's where they ought to be if the piece of paper were a curved piece of paper that was, I don't know, that looks like it's about 20 feet wide. Anyway, this is all part of the process. So consulting with the isolated floor plan, we begin to sketch the grid, the perspective grid. This requires a little bit of a leap of faith, but essentially you draw the grid in perspective as best you can. I'm figuring that the horizon line is probably about 6 or 7 feet off the ground, and the room's heights there are in the 12-foot range. Now I'm going to ink in those grid lines on the floor with my red pen so that I can see them for what they are, which is red equals grid. Okay? And then we need to move on to drawing the walls. You'll recall from our last chapter that the proportions of these walls up here over the east room are kind of hard to calculate because the east room floor is higher than the rest of the second floor. In drawing the up and down part of this grid, we want to make sure that our walls, that the wall pieces of the grids, the space, is 4 units by 6.5, maybe 7 feet. That sounds kind of imprecise, but I can't get any closer than this. Now I need to get rid of all of these pencil lines from the grid. They were only there to help me judge the proportion of the 4 to 7 rectangles along the walls. Now we can take it off to the blow-up place. Drawing the curved lines smaller is a lot easier for me, and they just blow it up. Then we get our paper on top, and then we start sketching in the floor plan on the grid. Where the grid tells us the walls ought to go is where they ought to go. So this gives me an idea of where the walls go, and then it's possible to extrude those walls, make them go up and down to the ceiling, which also gives me an idea where to put the window openings and the torn out walls that I want to use. A technique that I have developed over the course of working on a lot of these drawings is to work from the very back of the scene to the front. There are variations, and I bend the rules all the time, but that's how I work. So we're going to work out the back walls first. And then moving forward, we draw the furniture that's in front of the wall, the furniture for the sitting room. And then in front of that is a thing that's called the Lincoln bathroom. This has been a bathroom area at the White House since very early on. And it seems to be intact from 1952. It's all covered with mirror glass. The most complex thing in the whole drawing is the lunette window. Incredibly complicated, round, big, enormous window. Now I'm going to draw in the wall that's in front of the rest of the walls along the east sitting room. Okay, so this is how it's shaping up. We've got the walls in and a lot of the details are in. Some of the furniture is in, and we just keep plugging away at it. It's easier to draw chandeliers and other intricate objects on a separate sheet of paper and then stick them underneath the main drawing, erase the stuff, and then draw it in again. I do this all the time. The wallpaper in the Lincoln bedroom is a great challenge. It's geometric, but it's also a little tiny thing, and there's a lot of detail that goes into it. But the detail involved in the wallpaper is nothing in comparison with the carpet. I dug up as many photos of the carpet as I could, and I discovered that there was, of course, a pattern, and I began to number the squares, which allowed me to draw a top-down view of the pattern. So we do here the same thing that we did with the floor plan at the beginning of our exercise. Bend it down and take a look at what the distortion is. Then on a separate sheet of paper, I trace out the shape of the floor itself. And then after drawing the basic carpet pattern into the distorted shape of the floor, I then stick that underneath the paper and trace the parts that pertain, that show through. So that's the last step for the pencil. We're now ready to move to the next phase of things, which is the inking and the coloring. As you can see, it's a little wrinkled by now. That's due to the fact that my big fat cat sat down on it and wrinkled the paper. So join us again next time when we start inking and coloring in this particular drawing of the Lincoln bedroom. If you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe to the channel, and until then, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.